It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
Introducing the Blazor Power Hour.
No, seriously, it's time for Blazor Power Hour.
Hey friends, it's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
You're checking out the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
It's Blazor Power Hour. Go Ed!
Are you ready? Are you set? Got everything all ready to go? Let's do it. Let's do the Blazor Power Hour.
All right, there we go. The Blazor Power Hours are ready. God, I love that intro. Such fantastic people contributed to that. Got Daniel Roth and Steve Sanderson on there. Absolutely fantastic. Today, we're going to be talking about some .NET 6 preview features. It's in release candidate now, so just a few weeks away, we're going to be able to start using this in production. By the way, I see you there, Smab UK. Welcome to the show. There are quite a few new features coming. We're going to talk about some of the routing things that are coming in the latest updates. Hey, Mr. Magoo's here as well. Welcome. What is that? That emoji's a little bit too far away. I can't quite see it. Is that? Oh, it's a Fritzbot. Cool. It was kind of an odd angle. I thought it was like a sheep or something the way I was looking at it. Good stuff. So yeah, I've got the .NET 6 Preview 7 blog post up here. We'll probably reference this at some point. I'll pop this in chat as well in case you haven't seen the release notes here. This one has quite a large summary. I think this brought together all of the preview posts into one big post, so you can see all of the giant list of bullet points in here. We won't go over all of those. We're going to focus in specifically on this query route parameter feature that was added because there's different ways that we can route in our Blazor apps. And this one can handle some interesting scenarios that we can do now, but it takes a lot more work. So I'm going to pop up in Visual Studio Preview. We'll jump into this and we'll just discuss like the various ways to navigate between pages in Blazor. So let's go ahead and create a new WebAssembly app. Let's see, we'll just call this Blazor app 3. I got to make sure I'm in the right folder. I should be able to get rid of this soon. I have my repos 6 folder, which indicates this is .NET 6. And pretty soon I don't have to worry about this because we're going to have .NET 6 in full release, and I can remove my what is it called? The I have it scoped to .NET 5. I can't remember what the name of that file is, but I've got it dialed into .NET 5 on some folders and not others. So I need to make sure I place these codes in the right place. I'm going to leave out the hosted part of the application. We don't really need that. And then we'll hit create. So making sure we got .NET 6 preview in here. I should have the latest bits installed. I installed those just last week when it went live. So create a brand new project here. And then we'll kind of play with some of the different ways to navigate in the app and talk about why you might use one over another. We could use things like dependency injection and app state and things like that. And we could just use basic routing. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this. So first things first, let's go ahead and run our brand new app just to make sure it works. And there's our hello world. We could probably do something with the counter maybe to play with it, pass some variables along to the counter component. So let's look at one way we might want to do this. Let's pretend that we want to start this on the count of 5 or something. The reason you might do this not in the case of a counter, but pass some information from one page to another. You could imagine that on our hello world page here, or fetch data page would probably be a better example. I want to drill into some data. So I might want to like select a line from here, select a record off of this list or something, and have that navigate to an ID on another page, something like that. So one way we could do that is with routing. So what we could do is we could come in and we could double up on these page directives here. And we could actually specify a route that has an ID and int. I have a habit of getting these backwards. I think I got that in the right order. We'll check that in just a moment. And to pull in our ID number, or actually let's use count here because we are on a page here. Oh, am I not? I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you so much. I forgot to hit the screen share button. There we go. Thank you so much for that. It's early in the morning for me. It's 10 a.m. That's not really early, but I like to pretend it is. It feels early. The kids, I got them up and off to school at like 6 o'clock this morning, and 10 still feels early to me. So we're going to set up a brand new project here. It runs, it works just fine. We have a counter page. We're going to go ahead and do some navigating. In Surge Devs, it's at the end of the day for you, huh? Yeah. I'm not a morning person. I'd rather be up at 10 p.m. doing the show, but I digress. All right. So we're going to do some navigation with routing here first. And let's just go over to, I guess hot reload is enabled on this project. So it's trying to reload our app. If we navigate to our counter page, we're getting an error because I haven't assigned that variable anywhere. So let's go ahead and set up a parameter here. So this is just sending route data, basically, from one page to another. So we'll set up a parameter called count int, and it is a count. It's set, and I got to have public on there. It's going to yell at me. So I have a public int. Pop that up every time. And now my routing works fine because it's defaulting to here. It's satisfying this value here, but I haven't really passed anything in and we're not displaying this anywhere. So let's go ahead and add a place to display the value that we passed in. I'm just going to tack it on to the end of the counter here. We'll just say count at the end. And then let's go ahead and run the app. I know it's trying to do hot reloading. I haven't tested hot reloading in a basic Blazor app yet. But you can see we have counter 0 here. So we haven't passed anything over yet. So what I'll do is say counter and then /5. That should indeed pass over a value. We haven't assigned it anywhere yet, but you may be getting the idea here that we can pass values up here in the URL portion of the address. So this is the basic way that we can pass some parameters across our app. So on another page, let's go back to fetch data for a minute. And just for example here, we've got a for each in here. Let's drop a link in the temperature just to have some kind of random data here. We'll say anchor href equals, and then we'll say counter, and then we'll pass in the we'll pass in the temperature as the thing that we want to throw over to our counter component. Just to give us something we can click on and make things work. So that's now an anchor tag. Go back over to our page here, fetch data. Hot reload did not reload. Let's try a little .NET watch on this. See if that gives us our hot reload that we want. Let's see, where is... They moved the cheese on me. I want to open this in a command line, and I don't see my shortcut for that. I'll just go directly to my command line. Right click on the project. Yeah, I thought. Oh, there we go. Open in terminal. Just trying to get. I thought you could click anywhere on that, but apparently not. I don't do that too often. I usually use my own command line, trying to make things quick, and it's coming back to get me. So let's go ahead and do a .NET watch, and hopefully this will hot reload things so I don't have to keep going back and rerunning the project. All right, so hot reloading now. Let's go over to fetch data. You can say I enable links here. If I click on those, I get the page with that value being passed over. So now I've got a counter, and we should apply it to the count in some way, shape, or form to make that count actually be the starting point of that counter component. Ideally, you'd use something like this for, again, fetching a record by an ID or something like that. So if I'm on a list of some items, maybe I want to get the temperature for that day. I could have passed the date, but essentially this would be an ID to the record that we're going for. So that's one way to do routing. This works pretty well. I probably could have set this to current count directly. Let's go ahead and try that. Just drop the current count up there. And this current count now needs to be a public integer instead of a private one. Go ahead and change this. Public current count get set. That assignment over. Default that to 0. Go ahead. Yes, we want to always rebuild our project if we have to. count does not exist in the current context. We can remove this. So moving some things around a little bit to make this demo a little bit easier to see. All right, our counter's working again. We could drop in here at there. Now we're starting our count at 14 and so on. So now it's makes a little bit more sense. If you can see that, I'll zoom in a little bit better. So anytime we click on these numbers here, it's going to send us over to our counter page and begin our count at that number. So that works pretty good. And it is somewhat a shareable URL that we could hand off to somebody and, copy this URL from our address bar. There are, however, other ways that we need to share sometimes. If we have multiple sets of data, for example, these routes can get a little bit tricky. They have to be in a specific order. And if there's multiple parameters there, that can get a little bit stressful to try to share as a user if some of those variables don't line up exactly the way we expect them to. So we use QueryString parameters to pass data sometimes between web pages. And here's a pretty good example in here. I'll copy this into Visual Studio so we can take a look at it in greater detail. But you might have something like a search query. And if I could comment this out, I could zoom in on it a little bit. I don't want it to break my project if I accidentally save that. And what you can see here is I have a query string that says I'm going to the route of search. And then I have my question mark, which indicates the query string. And then these are my values here. So we'll break this down a little bit. You can see I've got filter and then a filter and then an ampersand that is anding these query strings together. So I want my filter page 3, and then I have an array of assignees that I'm passing into that page. So I'm searching, I'm filtering some stuff. I want page 3, and I want to filter by these two names here. So if we were to use routing for this, it would look something like this. Page equals, in that case, it's search. And then we would have a filter and then a page and so on, right? If these things are out of order, they won't work properly. So that's one issue. It can get to be a complex URL for another. Query strings are pretty standardized on the web, so people use these everywhere. These are good for like permalinking things. If you've seen like blog posts that have a permalink to get back, maybe you're generating a link to a tweet. So if you're on Twitter and you click that share a tweet button on there, it creates a query string like URL from that. There's a lot of reasons we might want to use these query string parameters in our app. So let's look at how we can do this counter component that I just created a demo for using a query string parameter instead of a route parameter. So essentially what this would look like is in my URL, I'm going to have a route of counter, get my home row better, counter, and then it would have something like this. Current count equals, and then some number. And then we need to get that assigned in our data down here somehow. In .NET 5, I think you needed a NuGet package to accomplish this the right way, or you had to I haven't personally done it, so I can't remember how you had to do it. It wasn't as straightforward, but now we have this built into .NET or into Blazor. So we can just access it through a property or an attribute, I mean, on our property. So now we have this supply parameter from query attribute that we can add. And in our code now, instead of using this route parameter, we'll take that out. We can come in here and just do this supply parameter from query attribute along with the parameter attribute. And this will look for the value in a query string and then apply it to the current count value. So I should be able to save this now. I need to go back and modify my fetch data, however. And instead of using slash, I need to come in here and say question mark current count equals, and then save that page. And it says reload was successful. There's nothing to see here. So that URL broke, which is what we expect. Now I'm going to try clicking on this and look at that. There's my 14 again, and I can count up. And if you look at the address bar, there was that address we navigated to. And it's zooming way too far. Question, current count 14. So we've got a question here from our YouTube channel. Just curious, do query string parameters only work for page components? I tried to get a query string parameter from a URL in a component within a page component, had no luck. That's actually a great question. So we can tackle that. And my understanding of it is this has to be a routable component. So what Michael's saying is if you're not using the page directive, this is not a routable component. It doesn't have a route, therefore I don't believe you can get route data from the query string. So what you could do, let's try this with our index page, Michael. So if we go to our index page and we drop, let's clear this out and put a counter component on our index page like this. And then this is hot reloading. So we should be able to just go back and there's our counter component on our index page. And on my index page, if I were to route to it and do a query string parameter of count, current count equals 5, 6, whatever, current count equals 6, you'll see that route data was not passed into the component, just like you said. So what you would have to do in this case is I do have a parameter on this component now called current count. It should be capital, by the way, just for best practice here. I should be making this a capital C. I did convert it to a parameter. So we'll go ahead and bump that up to a capital C, fix that a little bit. And then on my index page, I need a code block. And I need to have that same parameter on my index page, like so. Because the index page has the routing on it. So this is the route that I'm going to visit. And then I could just go ahead and pipe in current count equals current count here. And that's just going to pass that value along to that counter component now. And I didn't have to hit run. I do have it hot reloading in the background. So it's angry at me now. So let's try this again. index page, and we'll say slash question mark current count 6. There you go. Now it's working. So it has to have the route directive for this to work. The route directive is actually supplying the routing to that component. I think if you don't have the route directive, just any type of routing is ignored by the component at that level. So you're going to need it at the page level to make this work. But you can just pass it down into a component. If that component is not being used as a page, if this counter component didn't have a route at all, I would just strip that query string parameter off of this and use it at the index page level. Can I pass in a custom object? I don't believe so. So there's a list of these items in the blog post here. I don't believe you can, and the reason for that is because there's no way to represent that in the query string. So you'd have to do some kind of clever like serialization, deserialization from a query string into that object. It would be very hard to recognize that object in the query string. So it says component parameter supplied from query string may be of the following types: string, boolean, date, time, decimal, double, float, GUID, int, and long. Nullable variants except for string. I don't think there's a way to represent a null string necessarily. Arrays of the types nullable or not nullable. So we have quite a few of those in the example that they showed here, where the assignee is repeated twice. If it's repeated twice, it's seen as an array. And then, of course, the basic value types can be passed in. So string, integer, and that stuff. But custom objects, there's no real way to convert that into a query string. You could do your own kind of parsing of that by taking multiple parameters and having it having the parameters put out. We could test that actually. So if I had, let's come up with a scenario here. Let's try to pass a full weather forecast item into our weather forecast page. So what I might have is Michael says you could theoretically pass JSON into a query string. That seems like overkill. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and SMAP says a custom object would be in the request body normally. Yeah. So there's probably better ways to do it. We can mess around with this for a second, just because it's a good question, and then we can look at some of the other ways to pass data around our app. So if we had a weather forecast, what are some of the values that go into it? A date, a temperature, a summary, just those three things. So just to make things short and simple, I'm going to copy these and paste them back up here and turn them into parameters. Okay. So I could do something like this. It is a little hacky in my opinion, but you could say parameter on these. And then I also want to point out that these query string parameter attributes, you don't have to type them separately. You can also use commas in between them. And I'm going to forget this one. It's supply query parameter. You can also represent those like this. Define multiple attributes in one set of blocks. And then what you could do is you could say weather forecast from query, and then just put this out to a new weather forecast. See if it'll let me do this. It should. Where date equals date, and so on. Summary equals summary. Again, this is possibly a little hacky. Okay. And then in your code, you could grab this from query, and you're going to get a full weather forecast that was built from these values. So you could do something like that. And then let's see here. We'd have to add this to our forecast in some way. So we could do if from query is null. Come on. Do it this way. It's not null. There we go. It took a second for the IntelliSense to keep up. Forecasts. That's not an array, is it? An array, not a. That makes it a pain. Let me think. So it's already an array. If we did forecast, put this in a temporary for a second. Or have to mash these together. You know what? This is probably going to take too long. Let me just do it this way. If it was a list, it would have been easier just to grab that and append it to it. But now we're dealing with an array, so actually, no, it's not that hard. Sorry about that. Or let's just do temp here, and then we'll say a list of weather forecasts here. When we assign it, that's when we'll make it an array. We could say temp, if this is not null. Refilling form fields, yeah. Yeah, you could apply them to a model. That would work. Do that. And then we could say forecasts equals temp.toArray, like that. And it's giving me the old-fashioned, nullable. Even though I said is not null, it's still like, hey, this could be null. That's weird. This one I understand. This one, not so much. A little bit of false positive there, I think. And it's blowed up. All right, so fetch data. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Let's do this and say date equals, I don't know the date format. That's going to be an interesting one. What date format do query strings use? What date format do query strings use? Whoa, I didn't mean to close it. Trying to click on the address bar. Invariant date format. Boy, not an easy example out there. Nobody can just give me a direct answer here. Oh boy, people are parsing regexes. Just show me a written example of what it looks like. It's definitely decode HTML encoded and decoded. I get that. We don't actually have an example anywhere though of one in the wild. Oh well, we'll do this. Jeez. Let's just try. We'll throw a summary and temperature and see, and that should be enough. We should get a default date at the very least. So let's go back and in the command line, lost my .NET Watch. And I've got an error with a semicolon somewhere. I did not close this statement out. That's going to be a big help. I close that statement. Okay. Oh, there it added the default record there. So you can kind of get where this is going now. Let me say question mark summary equals hot. Here we go. Now it's technically binding to a whole object. So there's the date, the temp, and then this is just a property, just like the record itself is. So you could technically do that. You're still passing the values individually, though. You can't pass the values as a whole object. There's no query string representation of that object, is what it is. So you have to specify the individual properties. Now, another way that you could do something like that is to set up some state management. So what you could do is go in and add a class here. Say fetch data state. And then this could have a property that is a weather forecast, which I don't think I have access to here because it's in fetch data. So I have to pull this out into a separate class file. See if it works. There we go. Call it state for now. And then let's see if I didn't break fetch data. Yeah, so it still knows what a weather forecast is. And then in program CS, what we could do is we need to add a service here. We have to say builder.services, add scoped, and then we would throw in our fetch data state here. Register that service, and then we can come back to fetch data and inject the fetch data state here. And then on another page, when we navigate, we would set that fetch data state before we navigate. So let's go ahead and create a new record on that. We have to inject it again. Fetch data state, we'll throw it in our index page. And then down in the code, say do on initialized. You would code this however you like. I'm just trying to make it easy here. And I'm going to say state equals new, and then pop a new weather forecast in there. Sorry, called it state, and I also called the the variable state. Just call it data. Data.state equals new weather forecast. A date equals new, or date time now, and then the summary will say from index, and then the temperature in C is going to be -5. So this is just going to populate that state for us. And then back on our fetch data page, instead of grabbing these query string parameters, say if state, oh, I called it state on this one too, didn't I? Data. If data.state is not null, we'll go ahead and take that state and throw it in to the arrays and list those arrays out. So now we're passing a whole object around. It's not going to appear in the address bar though. So the downside to this is it doesn't create like that permalink experience. We can't link to it from an outside source. We have to physically be in the application to do that linking. So if I'm on my counter page, you see my summary is just defaulting to nothing. So I must have an empty record in here. It's never null for some reason. Let's go to home. And then when I navigate back to fetch data, nope, didn't do it. Didn't do it. Why didn't it do it? Homepage should have, let's try restarting the app. Maybe we don't have a proper copy of the app. Ah, that's what it was. It needed to be restarted. Look at that. And then let's try navigating over to localhost. I got nothing. I got nothing. All right, let's try again. I'd have had the wrong, I had the wrong localhost port. This will bring it up for me. So here we are. I've been added to a team. Okay. Let's jump straight to fetch data. And notice we have 5 records here. If I go to home and then come back, I have 6 with today's date and the from index value. So I was able to pass value from index to fetch data. However, I can't pass a value from like an outside session. I can't send somebody a link to this instance that has this fetch data or from index on it. So that's the difference here. So we've got so many ways to pass things around from one part of our app to another. There's less ways to pass things in from the outside world to our application. So we need to have a route value or a query string parameter to get data from outside the app. Again, like blog posts and permalinks are like a good way to show that. Let's take an example from, I'm going to pull up my Twitter's off camera here for a moment and find a lovely progress tweet. If I say copy link to tweet, let's see what we get in here. It should be something. So I don't know what S20 stands for, but we have like an ID number plus S20. I don't know what that means. So there is some kind of data being passed here. So 21 is. I don't know what that means. Don't know. So yeah, they're doing some URL shortening or something in that one, but I think the point's being made. So if you want to pass data from outside of your app to inside of your app, so you can share between users, you want to create an experience where somebody can just go up in the address bar and copy some information. Maybe Amazon would be a better example. A shopping list. You're doing a search in Amazon. You want to share some results that you found. That might be something that you want to pass as a query string. And theirs are very complex and encoded, so I'm not going to share that one either. They encode their query strings so you can't read them. Sometimes it's nice to have them human readable. They gave a great example in the Blazor preview blog post, where you have some search criteria that you're sending from outside of your application. So you have your filter and your data being passed, your page data and whatnot being passed over to a search page. It's a really great example of how you'd use something like this. So you want something that you can share in an email, share on a social media site or something like that, where you are passing in some state to your application from the outside. If you don't need that functionality, I would say use app state. If you have a very structured URL and the order of the parameters and the way you receive them is very well structured, so you have things within your app that you're clicking on preformed URLs to go back and forth between, use route data. Use route parameters. If it's something that you expect a human might change the order of those items around, use query string parameters. A lot of times query string parameters are used in GET requests. So if you're passing things to an API that has a GET request, maybe you just pass those parameters along too. Just be careful of security concerns and something like that. But it's a really cool feature. Getting query string parameters can be a headache. Parsing those things out of the query string is no easy task. Usually involves some kind of library. In this case, it's being added directly to Blazor as part of the ASP.NET Core Components library. So cool stuff. Looking forward to .NET 6. We've got just a few more weeks ahead of us here before .NET 6 arrives. I have a show lined up for next week. Let's see what we're talking about there. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull this screen back just a little bit because I need to pull up an email and it may show up on this screen for a moment. I don't want it. There we go. We'll move it over here. I've got 2 shows planned for Blazor Power Hour. Next week is going to be detecting user theme preferences. So we'll talk about getting the user's theme preferences and using another .NET 6 feature to set those theme preferences. So we're going to look at the other part of this blog post, which is the head. Where is it there? Modifying the head content HTML from Blazor components using the head content component. So or the outlet. So we're going to use this to detect and modify the user's theme without JavaScript. We'll do that next week. Now, We also have a major announcement coming next week. I can't give you any more information than that. We're launching something. It's going to be cool, but I can't talk about it yet. I spent the good part of yesterday doing some one-on-one calls with specific people from the community to get some feedback last minute before we launch this thing next week. And so far, everything seems really positive about it. So tune in next week. We'll talk about what that is. We'll talk about grabbing user preferences and modifying the head of your HTML tag in your application. And then on November 3rd, 2 weeks away, I'm going to have a special guest. You might know him. C# Fritz is going to join me on the show, and we're going to talk about what's coming in .NET Conf that following week. So we're going to give a pregame show to .NET Conf. You ever seen the Super Bowl? You know, that sports thing where they get on there and talk about the two teams that are going to play and all the great things that they've done for the past year. We're kind of doing that. We're going to talk about all the amazing announcements that we anticipate, what sessions that are going to be on the 3 days of .NET Conf, and which ones you should see if you're interested in Blazor development. Because there's so much content in that .NET Day for all sorts of things, desktop and Maui and Xamarin and iOS and Android. .NET runs everywhere these days. So we're going to try to focus our attention on the Blazor stuff, tell you who's talking about what and when to tune in. So don't miss that show either. Thanks for the tip on how to pass a custom object. Didn't know any way to do that. Oh, you're very welcome. There's a couple ways to do it. We showed, I think, 2 ways here. There's probably more, but those would be the 2 best ways, I think, is to do it that way. I'm glad you all learned something today, and I'll be back next week. Tomorrow, we normally do a VR show. I have meetings all day. Won't get to the VR show. I'm sorry. I will try to hop on Friday and do some office hours on my channel, though. And then we have Sam Basu should be on with his chat show on Friday as well. So make sure you tune into those. And later this afternoon, I think it's about 45 minutes here, we have our React Wednesdays. Don't miss those. And I will see you all soon. Let's go ahead. Let me check our calendar real fast and make sure that we indeed have some time between us and React. If we do have some time, what I'm going to do is do a raid, and then you all can come back and see the React Wednesday show when it is ready. So just give me 1 second here to get either a raid going or make sure that we've got something on schedule here. Oh, actually don't see a React Wednesday this week. So we'll go ahead and raid. If we do have another show today, you will get an alert if you're signed up on the, if you're following, you will get an alert there. So let's go ahead and we'll raid someone. Let's see who's online today. Let's see. We've got one Lion. I don't know that show. It's a software and game dev. Let me check some of my bookmarks here. See if I can spot anybody that I know streaming. Oh, Eagle is streaming. Of course, we can go see Eagle. He's a good friend of mine. Let's go see what Eagle is up to. Good old Eagle Hansen is streaming probably about B Unit. Oh, no, it's not invented here show, it says. So he's talking about something Blazor related that he did not invent. That's always a fun one. Say hi to Eagle for me. We'll jump over to his show. I'll see you all later this week. Take care.